talking South of Heaven by Slayer. Scott, tell us, why did you choose this record to talk about?
There's lots to talk about with South of Heaven, like the philosophical angle of like the titling and the lyrical content, the more mid pace of the record and the more song focused. While like Rain and Blood is a very songs focused record, South of Heaven is like even more songs focused and really strong musical arrangements to support those songs. And it was just like so different for like heavy, scary music of the time. So my initial introduction to Slayer was Rain and Blood. And I was maybe not even a teenager yet, like maybe 12 or 13 years old, something like that. Like before I went to high school, I was in grade 8. So I maybe 13. And I just saw the album cover and it disturbed me. And I'm just like, whoa, what is this? I can't deal with this. Don't even want to listen to it. And then, eventually I listened to it. I'm like, what was I thinking? This is unbelievable. But, Slayer has this very evil sort of ominous thing. But as you dig deeper into Slayer, and I think South of Heaven as the single, as well as just the record in general, the way that the title sort of positions the record is hell is here. Earth is hell. Like the human condition is hell. Like war is hell. Like we create hell. And if there is a South of Heaven, it's here. Like hell is the thing below heaven. I don't know. Like I say, I don't know if I said this, but perhaps I'm kind of just putting my thing on it, but it really was like a powerful impression in that way. And I kind of got it, I'm like, oh, it's not actually evil. At least for me, it wasn't about Slayer being evil. Most people always go to the evil of it, the satanic, whatever. Like the very first, I think it was Rolling Stone did a review of the South of Heaven when it first came out. And I think it gave it 1 star.
I read that yesterday.
Okay.
And it was the worst music review I've ever read. You could tell that the person, 1, doesn't like heavy metal, 2, didn't even listen to the album. And they just decided to say what they think about Slayer and also throw Stryper into the review just to shit on another band that's like the polar opposite of Slayer. And it was an absolute garbage review. And it was one of those things that they years later revised.
That's right. Yeah. They're like, oh, shoot, we were totally wrong. This is a very important record. Yeah, the Stryper references, I'm like, what is happening? But, Christianity and just religion in general is it's a deep topic in across the West. You have sort of scientific materialism, maybe even atheism, whatever, as a large part of the culture. And then you have this sort of the Christian camps, and across the West, like what's actually amazing about it is it in theory welcomes all religions, welcomes all faiths, all perspectives and whatnot, but it's contentious. And especially when it comes to these imageries and these metaphors and these philosophies that maybe explore the edges of human behavior, its relationship spiritually to that which is beyond, or its relationship spiritually to who we think we are, all that stuff. So that review was really interesting because it was just this reactionary, it was that side, it was the sort of religious side, or you don't even necessarily need to be religious to be sort of the Christian culture. I would say that I'm a product of Christian culture. I grew up in Christian culture, and a lot of my values are based on Christian ideals, but I don't identify as really religious at all, although I'm very deeply interested in spiritual ideas, or the more than this idea. I just don't pretend to say that I have the answers. But anyway, that Slayer was a very good agitator of the thought surrounding these things. I think if it wasn't for bands like Slayer and many others, that I wouldn't have thought so deeply about um, what does it mean to be a human being? What does this? What is this? Why is this? Why does reality self-organize? And people are like, "Whoa, how'd you get there from Slayer?" But I'm like, it really does challenge the status quo to that depth, even though it's like cool and metal and like Slayer horns and a bunch, often synonymous with a bunch of drunk guys in line at the concert or whatever. Like there is that part of it, but I think there's a much more profound depth to Slayer than maybe the mainstream has ever entertained or considered. And for me personally, this record, it's where I really got it, or at least it made sense to me in my way. And also Dave Lombardo just murdered that album.
Yes. Yes.
And
All
I'd
such
never heard
talented
drums like that.
musicians. Yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
And back to your point about people automatically thinking Slayer is they're just these evil guys or provocateurs. I always saw them as reporters. They're not necessarily taking a stand, but they're just talking about the evils of humanity, whether it was the Holocaust or terrorism or cannibalism or anything. They're just saying, wow, look how messed up we are.
Hell is here, dude.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
hell. I have this, I've been playing with this, you play with these ideas all the time. You're like, what is reality? Well, what if? And my hot thing at the moment is like the kind of thinking about the ideas of reincarnation and that this is hell and we keep getting sent to hell until we figure it out. And this is, I guess, more in line with the Buddhist concept. I'm not speaking for Buddhists. I'm not that deep on the philosophy, but um, that enlightenment is the escape of the reincarnation process, and that this place is the testing grounds where you figure all that out, sort out your evils.
Yeah. Brian, you're the
I
Buddhism
don't know.
expert. Did he get it right?
Yeah, really close. I mean, one of the ideas about this world in the Buddhist tradition is that when you're reincarnated as a human, it's the only chance you have to actually attain enlightenment. It's like the middle of the cycle. And so
the human experience, the human being specifically?
Yeah, being human, being incarnated as a human is your chance to do something to obtain enlightenment. And in the Hindu tradition, the idea is you obtain enlightenment and you get off the wheel of samsara. You get out of hell, using the Slayer analogy. Right. But in the Buddhist tradition, there's this idea of the bodhisattva, which is somebody who gets enlightenment and then decides to stay anyways to help everybody else. So acknowledging that you're in hell and deciding to stay because everybody else needs to escape hell too. You can't just ditch them and leave. And so that's Mahayana Buddhism. That's the great vehicle. You're going to take your little rowboat and you're going to stay on the shore and you're going to get everybody else across. And the Arahat is the guy that stays on the mountain and obtains enlightenment and leaves everybody else to burn, sticking with the Slayer analogy.
So long, suckers.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you were saying is like, well, Slayer is evil and bad and people have all sorts of reactions to it. But what you deny, repress, or suppress, if you blew up a balloon like halfway and you stuck it in your hand and you squished it, it's going to stick out through all your fingers. And it's the same thing with things that are bad or evil. If you deny, repress, or suppress it, it's going to come out in weird ways. And one of the things that's cool about metal is you get to explore all of those nasty, evil, horrible things so that they don't come out in weird ways.
Right.
You're sublimating it and you're expressing it and you're saying, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you're saying like war is awful and horrible and it's nasty. And we're going to write a whole song about it and we're going to explore that. But if we denied it, we might be advocating for something that we don't truly understand that would really do a whole lot of horrible, horrible things to a lot of people. Right. So I really liked that idea of like, it's not that Slayer is evil. It's that they're exploring evil concepts. And if you're a Christian, one of the things that you're going to think about, especially if you're Catholic, is like Tom Araya, is that you're going to have to contend with the other side of Christianity, which is sin and evil and all the things that you're working against, like the 7 deadly sins or whatever it is that you're trying to escape through your religious tradition. Another thing that's interesting is there's this idea of a spiritual bypass. where I'm so enlightened or I'm so spiritually awake that I don't have any of these bad things in me and I'm just going to ignore them. And you've met people like that who like claim to be some spiritual expert, but are still yelling at you for
A
no
lot.
apparent reason.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, well, so you don't want to fall into that trap either. There's that meme on the internet where it's like you have two wolves inside you. Which one are you going to feed? Right.
That's very metal.
Yeah. Well, my joke is you got to feed both.
Right.
You can't only feed one because the other one's going to get starved and it's going to kill you
That
because
makes
it's
sense.
hungry, right? You have to feed both. There's another joke about metal where it's like metalheads are nice people trying to be mean and scary. And hippies are mean people trying to be nice, right? And if all the metalheads I've ever met in my life have been some of the nicest people you would ever meet, right? And it's because I really do think that this is kind of true. It's like they've explored some of these darker themes through the music. And so they're more stable in a lot of ways than somebody that would be like, no, we're just going to do Puff the Magic Dragon. We're going to just jam out and get high and we're going to ignore all that bad stuff. Right. And I think metalheads are much more grounded in reality in a lot of ways because they're not ignoring a whole part of themselves.
Yeah.
So that got real deep real quick. Sorry, Matt.
It did. No, that was great.
I love it. You're speaking my language.
Yeah. And it fits perfectly, I think. Scott, you said that you started your Slayer listening with Rain in Blood, and then out came South of Heaven 2 years later.
Yeah, I actually started listening to it with South of Heaven, but I had become familiar with Rain and Blood only in the album cover. My friend Corey Bertinsky, shout out Corey Bertinsky. He's the guy who got me into playing like metal guitar and stuff like that and introduced me to like palm muting. I was like, what is that sound? I need it, all of that. But he's like, oh, this record. And he pulled out the Slayer Rain and Blood record. And I only saw it. It was a vinyl 12-inch. This is back in the 80s, like when it came out. And I was like, it's too evil. Like there's something so disturbing about that record cover. I can't even look at it. Please put it away. And so every time I would end up over there, he would taunt me with it. He's like, they're coming to get you. I grew up in a Catholic family. And, the threat of Satan was constant. So even though I was I challenged religion deeply from a very, very, very young age, I was still smashed by it every day of my life. So I went to Catholic school and all that stuff.
Catholic guilt never goes away.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I had the fear.
Okay. So you heard South of Heaven before Rain and Blood.
Yeah.
I think.
And then I went back and I was like,
okay,
I get it. I get all of it. This is incredible.
Any standout tracks for you on the album?
On South of Heaven?
Yeah.
The title track, South of Heaven. Like Mandatory Suicide is awesome. Like the whole record is amazing. So what's interesting about South of Heaven, the title track specifically, and it was also the first single, is it's a ballad, and at the time, lots of metal bands were trying to do ballads and they were usually corny AF. And, South of Heaven is like essentially a ballad for Slayer as far as Slayer goes. But it's like so badass. And it has all these like chords in it, like, and they really have a way of using like diminished scales. Like it's a type of harmony. It's not harmony, diminished. They're symmetrical scales. I don't want to get into the musical technicalities, but they use note sequences that are very obtuse and maybe evil sounding. And the way that they employed them was just really, really interesting. And no other band was really doing it other than maybe Voivod. But Voivod wasn't really as prevalent as Slayer at that point in time. And so it was a ballad, but it was badass. It was a single with a video on MTV and Much Music. And the whatchamacallit, I don't know if it was on MTV actually. I know it was on Much Music, but Much Music was Canada's version of MTV. And they kind of merged in a way in Canada. Anyway, and it was really well written. It was a song. the whole album is songs, verse, chorus, bridge, whatever. Not always that kind of an arrangement, but they're arranged into songs. But the content of the songs was really like kick ass. I'm like, what is this? Like, who does this? It was just really kind of shocking in a way because it was so heavy and badass, but it was a ballad, but it was also like a song and you could sing along to it and it was memorable. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, it was just so shocking. And then you go back and you listen to Rain and Blood and you realize, oh, they were already doing this on Rain and Blood. It just, because it's so relentless and brutal and it wasn't as hyper focused, like South of Heaven is what, as a record, was really hyper focused in terms of the songwriting and the arrangements and all of that stuff. And they, Dave Lombardo's, I think, his best drum performances are on South of Heaven. Like those fills are insane. Well, Seasons in the Abyss is also really good. And as far as drums go, there's no slouch Slayer tracks really, but South of Heaven just kind of had all the stuff. So I when we were initially talking before doing this episode, I picked South of Heaven, the album, but also South of Heaven, the single, because I think it's the perfect choice for the single to represent this record because of all those things. It's just so innovative, so out of left field as far as, the conventions of metal at the time and all of that. Does anyone feel similar?
Yeah. So go ahead, Matt. I was going to ask, I wanted to go back to what Scott was saying about like his introduction to Slayer and this album. Like, what was yours, Matt? Because you had like a really interesting, I liked Coercion of Conformity and I was on vacation with my family story. Like, what was your initial connection with Slayer?
Honestly, I don't remember. It's one of those bands.
They just were, right?
They just were. Like, as long as I knew of heavy metal, I knew that Slayer was a thing even long before I was listening to them. I didn't get into super heavy stuff right away. Growing up, once I got into rock, it was more of the alt rock and the grunge of the time. And gradually things got heavier. And I don't remember when Slayer came into the picture. But yeah, they were just one of those bands where it's like, the big reveal in Empire Strikes Back, even if you never saw it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just ubiquitous.
It's a convention.
That's how Slayer was. Yeah. But then once I did start listening, then I really dove in and I like their whole catalog, but South of Heaven is pretty amazing, especially coming right after Rain and Blood, which was so fast and, like you said, relentless. And then even the band themselves said, well, we can't top that. We can't just try to do that again. So we have to go in a completely different direction. And so they slowed the pace, but still kept it heavy and brutal. And it just shows you can bring the evil without being super fast or super loud. Like that opening riff is just killer.
It's so dark. Yeah.
It was real similar to Scott's story about his friend tormenting him with the album cover. There was a kid in middle school, Joey Hawansky, and he had a Slayer band t-shirt, Divine Intervention, the album cover with the skeleton, right? And it looked so evil. And I was like a super conservative Christian at the time. And I just was like, I don't know what that is, but I want no part of that, right? But being from where we're from, like Slayer was on AAF and you heard Rain of Blood, whether you wanted to or not. But I remember being on our radio show, Matt, when God Hates Us All came out.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that South of Heaven and God Hates Us All have a lot of parallels because, like Scott was saying, there are songs you can sing along to. Like you can try to keep up with some of their other songs, but good luck, right? But at least this one is slow enough that you can kind of, at least get some words out while you're driving in the car that are somewhat aligned with what's happening. The other notable thing about that was people are like, oh, they slowed it down. It's still a Slayer album. It is not I'm a Doom guy. I like Sleep. I like, I like Electric Wizard. They have some slow, drudgy songs. And so even South of Heaven it's almost kind of like Slayer got so used. I'll just say what I was going to say. It's almost like they did an experiment that had really positive results on their later albums. It's like, okay, we're going to try this different thing. And they took the things that worked for them out of this album, and it shows up in all their future albums, like God Hates Us All. But I also think Slayer was a victim of their own success, because to them, this felt like a failure, right? Like they did not like this album, but everybody else, like the fans, loved it. And here we are talking about it 1988, and we're in 2026, like 28 years later, we're still having conversations about this album.
38. It
38,
make you feel old.
Jesus. I mean, that they felt like this was a missed opportunity for them, and it's still this amazingly excellent album. It's kind of like Daniel Cormier, the UFC double champ in the heavyweight division and the light heavyweight division. He's still upset that he lost to John Jones, but he was a double champ. He had all this success, and he's like not good enough. Like Slayer has the same thing going on with South of Heaven, where it's like, they ask Kerry King and is it Hanneman?
Jeff Hanneman.
Like, would you guys do like a South of Heaven tour? And they're like, yeah, I don't think so. Like, it wasn't a very good album. Come on. Like you can't be that good that you're dunking on some of your best stuff because you're like, it was a bad Tuesday. Like, that's how it feels. And the other cool things about this album, like, I wasn't familiar with this one. Like, I just get jazzed when Slayer comes on. And I'm just like, oh, it's Slayer. I don't care what album it is. I'm going to listen to whatever track comes up, and I'm just going to be stoked. But when I listened to this a few different times, like, I thought that there were some tempo was really close to God Hates Us All. And I really liked that low fidelity introduction on Ghosts of War, where it's supposed to sound like it's out of place and from time immortal, because how long's war been going on, right? And you've got this reference to ghosts. Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's perfect. You got like this like low fidelity, out of tune start to the song. And then it's this basically an anti-war song. And I also thought it was good because like you can hear Tom's lyrics and you can hear what he's singing, and you can very clearly you can understand it. And Tom Lombardo's drums are pushed all to the front. And I think that's kind of interesting because Rick Rubin was the executive director or executive producer on both God Hates Us All and on this album. And the drums are forward on both of them. And they're both really critically acclaimed albums. And it just, and people love this album so much. Like, there's a really good cover by Vader, Silent Scream. And this is a really successful album as well. It was number 57 on the top 200. I know we talked about that Billboard doesn't really matter, but it gives you some type of objective measure to like, it still gets hundreds of thousands of streams per month. I know we were dunking on Spotify earlier, but like, it's such a good listen. And I think the other thing I liked about it too was because it is just a little slower, like for me, because I'm like I said, I'm like a doom guy. Like it's like, okay, like I can hear some of that sludge to this. Like it's not all the time because they're still really fast at certain moments, but it was relatable. And I really enjoyed getting back into it because I like Matt, I got into Slayer later. I just remember that Henry Rollins bit about listening to Slayer at the gym, and he starts belting out lyrics like God Hates Us All, and everybody stops what they're doing and looks at him, and he doesn't know because he's got his headphones on. Like they're almost like, yeah, we were talking about it. Like they're just so embedded in the culture. I remember we got sushi one night in college and they brought it out, and one of the chefs knew that somebody was a metal fan in the group, and they wrote Slayer in sriracha, just like the logo, right on for Heil. Yeah, it was Heil Bradley. They wrote it on his plate for him. Like this was really enjoyable, and I was glad that Scott suggested it for this album or for this.
Yeah,
this
I was really psyched.
Podcast.
Good choice.
Cool.
Another thing that we do on the show is we talk about the classic album, but then we make some recommendations for further listening. So any other bands that you would suggest for people who enjoy South of Heaven?
I'm not sure. Let's see. Like I would like to, if I was going to recommend something, I would like to recommend something now, like something current. And, similar, but not similar in terms of impact, but very different, obviously. Like, similar in terms of impact, similar in terms of innovation. So at the time, this was extremely innovative. So at this time what is very innovative and has similar kind of impact. And we live in a really interesting time because it's very accessible to be able to produce and release music. And so a lot of people do. Not very much of it bubbles up to the top, but a lot of the stuff that might be still stuck to the bottom is extremely interesting. There's a band out of New York City that's really interesting to me. And I actually don't know how I feel about them exactly, other than like I find them very interesting. And they're called Imperial Triumphant. And they're very strange in the way that they compose their music. It's metal, and there's a lot of blast beats and such. There's like clearly a black metal influence, but it's not black metal. It's heavily influenced by the Art Deco period of architecture. And they have that kind of flavor. They do kind of dress up in, I don't know if they do it in all of their performances, but they present it more like an art piece. And I'm typically like a pretty big critic of that, but it is a parallel to Slayer, because Slayer in their first 3 records, like Haunting the Chapel, what else? Hell Awaits and Show No Mercy. Such dark titles. But on all 3 of those records, I'm pretty sure that Slayer wore corpse paint, like way before black metal was a thing. And Slayer also did dress up through the majority of their career, and no one really talks about this, but like Jeff Hanneman always wore the sort of the black sports pads that were all spiked out, and the guitar straps with like gigantic spikes on them, and Kerry King with the giant chains and the leather pants. They always wore leather pants. So I'm like, who wears leather pants? Slayer wears leather pants. But people kind of just like, yeah, whatever, like they can do that. They're Slayer, but it is kind of, it's not funny or anything, but there are some that would say, oh, that's very corny. But we kind of just look past that with Slayer entirely. For some reason, they did get rid of the makeup a long time ago. But Imperial Triumphant does this sort of theatrical kind of thing. And I don't really know how I feel about it within the context of a band. Typically, I'm not a fan of those things like Slipknot and things like that. I'm like, I could do without the get-ups. But I don't know, for some reason, Imperial Triumphant has this artsy, there's this creative spirit in it. I don't know if I would say it's good or not. I just find it very interesting. And I think it's worth a listen, because I think there's, in ways, parallels to at least Slayer's creative contributions.
And it was a tough question, because Slayer is so influential that if you're looking for bands that are similar to Slayer, well, you might default to thrash, and that was mostly what I was looking around for preparing for this episode. But they've been influential on death metal and other subgenres. Yeah, so you can go in a lot of directions with Slayer. I mean, just about every really heavy metal band, you can look back in some form to Slayer.
Yeah. They're really interesting. No one ever talks about the fact that they were the only rock-oriented band on all of Def Jam. Every other band was a hip-hop oriented band. And I don't think that's a bad thing or anything, but like they were just such outliers in so many categories. And it's just so interesting. And they wore these get-ups, and they used to have corpse paint, and Rick Rubin, like it was also the catapult of Rick Rubin's career in a lot of ways. And it's just so like in the thrash heavy metal world, like why is Rick Rubin doing this record? Why is it on a rap label? Like, but it worked great. And yeah, like you were saying, the band is like way bigger than itself. It's like, it's this cultural cornerstone, it's so
100%.
It's such a weird outlier. And so, you can isolate and talk about like just the music, or you can talk just about the sort of lyrical, philosophical questions that come out of it. You can talk about the artwork. You can talk about the Slayer fans. You can talk about the sort of overall sort of zeitgeist of the Slayer universe.
Yeah. Cultural cornerstone is a great phrase for them. I don't know how many bands have a more devoted fan base. Like, yes, in sheer numbers, there's probably more Beatles fans, more Taylor Swift fans, but are Swifties carving her name into their arms?
Maybe.
Well, okay, some of them are a little nutty. Yeah.
Yeah. That's entirely possible.
Well, okay, I'll give you that.
some of the bands that I thought about, like other than the big four, right? Slayer, Anthrax, Metallica, Megadeth. Death Angel was something that somebody mentioned to me when I said, "Oh, do you listen to Slayer?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I really liked that they were using the lead vocalist from Death Angel on Kerry King's new album from 2024. And I was like, "Oh, Death Angel." And I had a whole kick for like a month where I was listening to Death Angel to like catch up because I felt like I had missed this thing. So, but for like modern stuff, temporary stuff that's going on right now, I don't like using modern. This is just a weird thing about me. It'll be a fun little nugget for the podcast. I don't like using modern because it refers to 1950s architecture. Like we're well past that, but we're not. Postmodern has its own problems. So contemporary bands. So Enforced out of Virginia, they've been holding the thrash crown for a while, I think, like in terms of like, up until recently, like Megadeth hadn't put out an album. Metallica is sporadic and when they release stuff. And so I feel like Enforced was doing that for a while. So check them out, specifically A Leap into the Dark on their last EP. It lines up really well with South to Heaven. So worth a listen. And then Stone Nomads, I know they're more of the doom thing, but their opening track on their album, it sounds like slowed down thrash. And so what was the name of that one? It's going to bother me. Yeah, Lost in the Storm. It would fit in fine with the South to Heaven conversation that we're talking about. And then I found this new band, Desert Storm, though they're new to me. I don't think that they're new, but they just had an album released this year and they have a song called Newfound Respect. And it's another like slowed down thrash track. It would fit in fine with South to Heaven. So those were the three picks that I had based off like more contemporary stuff that you could get into if you're a huge Slayer fan, specifically if you like South to Heaven.
Yeah. I appreciate the distinction of contemporary.
Yeah. Right.
That does make a lot of sense. Yeah. And a couple that I found, Power Trip. I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Really fun band.
They are fun. Yeah. And another band that's right behind me, Shadows Fall. I really like them, and they tend to, and maybe it's the time that they emerged or the scene, the Western Massachusetts with Killswitch Engage and All That Remains. They tend to get called metalcore, but I've always seen them as more of a thrash band. I always saw them as
are very thrash influenced for sure.
Yeah. I always felt that they were bringing like some of the 80s thrash into that scene more so than some of the other bands. So, and I've been a Shadows Fall fan for a long time. So, and then the other band and actually I reached out to them. We're going to play a track of theirs at the end of the show. They're called Intoxicated.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool thrash band from Florida. So, we're going to hear from them at the end.
Sick.
So, what was the other band you mentioned? So it was Shadows Fall, Intoxicated, and then I just don't want to forget it.
Power Trip.
Power Trip.
And while we're talking about various types of metal, and we've got Scott here. Scott, help me convince Matt that we need to do a hair metal episode.
For sure.
I mentioned it, and he was like, "Oh, hell no." And I was like, but come on. There's like, I'd love to do a Crew album or...
I will get out of my comfort zone and do some hair metal.
Yeah. I am also very like kind of late to the hair metal thing because there were, the peacocking of it was really turned me off of it initially, so much so that I was never able to see anything of value in it. But there's actually plenty of value in it. Like the band Rat had some, like Warren DeMartini, incredible guitar player, Round and Round is a great tune. They have a bunch of hits that are great. And I didn't know it then. Whitesnake, great band. David Coverdale, Steve Vai was in that for a moment. Yeah, Motley Crue, obviously like major. I would say Motley Crue at the height of their career, Theater of Pain and Dr. Feelgood. What else? They have one other in between there, that period. They have many records, but like they have certain records at the height of their career. Anyway, major contribution to that world and just like kick-ass songs. Ozzy Osbourne, like on his own, like Blizzard of Oz and Bark of the Moon, like incredible records. They fall into that category, but they're just like killer metal records, but they're definitely thought of as hair metal records or part of that scene. There's so many of them, but you have to kind of like get rid of the The notion
Yeah.
of the showy peacock kind of, extra piece of sausage in their super tight spandex pants. Like, that stuff was, I couldn't get past it. I still can't in a way, but like, I'm just like, okay, there was some killer tunes back then.
When you said that Power Trip was a really fun band,
Yeah.
that's what made me think of it. Is there's a lot of fun to be had in that.
The tunes are
subgenre.
like
Yeah.
fist pumpers.
Yeah. And what redneck doesn't love like Kickstart My Heart or something, you know?
I don't know. I'm not a redneck, but like I know how to split a mean cord of wood and listen to, Kickstart My Heart.
We were outside Market Basket. I was with my youngest and total New England thing, Market Basket. Sorry. And this clapped out 80s Camaro that somebody was rebuilding was playing Whitesnake. And I just was like, yeah, like there's a whole vibe going on there that I can get into.
Yeah.
Like, I like where your head's at, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was just waiting for someone to dance on the hood of the car.
Yeah. 1000%.
I think at this moment in history as well, like all of the music that we're talking about obviously fits into this, but at this moment in history, there's like an emerging hunger for a kind of, a realness from times gone by, times, from the past. There's something very tactile about all this music, something like you can kind of grab it and feel it just in the air. Whereas a lot of top 40 that's coming up, a couple days ago, my wife and I, we were going to our storage space because we're sorting everything out in our big move here. And we were listening to the radio. Rarely listen to the radio, but we had a great radio connection and it was alt rock radio, like, or new rock radio, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, whoa, like what's happening in rock radio right now? And every song was like perfectly crafted in such a way that it had no edges left on it. And you couldn't feel it. It was just so smoothed over, so produced, so like perfected. And I'm like, this is why all these old bands, like people are crazy for them. They're all touring again. They're all bigger than they ever were. Exodus just released a new record and it's like, they're doing better than they ever did in history,
Because it's real.
Yeah,
right?
Death Angel did a new record and Death Angel is like probably bigger than they ever were back then.
And we're seeing a resurgence in hardcore too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New hardcore bands this is a moment for hardcore that's probably on a bigger scale than ever.
Yeah. And it's because I think it's because we just want real things. We don't want to be like spoon fed what the label thinks will be popular or whatever. They're like, this is what I make and this is it, and it's for real. It's not heavily edited or corrected. We did our best to make this record, but like this is our true best. And I think you just naturally find that more in these genres, and especially on old records because that's all they could do. But yeah, who else recently? Testament did a new record recently and it's kick ass. It's so kick ass. I can't even believe it. I'm like, it's also fresh, like it's new. And I'm like, how does a band with this deep of a legacy at this stage in their lives do such a fresh record? We're so used to hearing that idea about older legacy bands, older bands, kind of phoning it in or whatever. This is not that at all. It's so kick-ass. I'm just like, where do they find it? Getting worn down by the road and by managers and Testament, I think, is self-managed. But anyway, I digress. Yeah.
It's just interesting. We mentioned all those hair metal bands. Slayer was recording right alongside them.
They were.
Right. And so you have this contrast that goes all the way back to like those two wolves we were talking about, where it's like, and I think Scott hit it, like there was some unrealness to the hair metal. There was some fake, there was some pop, some circumstance. And then on the opposite side, you got the realness with Slayer coming.
And I guess whenever things in pop culture feel a little too phony, a little too polished, that's a good sign because it means something else is bubbling up under the surface.
I like that. I've never really thought of it, but it with that twist, like as a signal for hope, so to speak, as a signal for like the new frontier of something exciting. The mediocrity is that flag. Interesting.
Thank you, guys.
Good one, Matt.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, guys, it was great talking to you about Slayer, and Scott, good catching up with you about all things the Bunn, and wish you the best with your ditching Spotify and going to YouTube and
hot take.